Evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to our regular school board meeting. Today is January 18th, 2024, a little past 6 o'clock, and I'd like to welcome each one of y'all. We do have a quorum. Last two gentlemen, part of our district. I wanted to say these are the hardest working guys in our district, but I got to include them with everybody else, so the hard work they do. So I got Mr. Martinez is going to lead us in invocation, and Mr. Lopez is going to direct us on the pledges.
Bow your heads. Heavenly Father, as we pray together, we ask that you send your Holy Spirit upon us. Grateful for all the blessings that you have given to each and every one of us, and especially to this district. And with this Spirit that you send upon us, that we may be illuminated in making the right decisions for this district and for this community. We make this prayer in your Son's name, who lives with you in unity with the Holy Spirit, God, forever and ever. Amen.
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 Thanks, sir.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to the United States of Texas, one state under God.
Thank you, gentlemen. This time, do we have any citizen comment?
Yes, sir, we have two.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go over the rules and then we'll begin. Any person wishing to address the board during the period reserved for the public comment at a board meeting must sign up in accordance with the district policy BED local. Each participant will be limited to 3 minutes to make comments to the board. When necessary for effective meeting management or to accommodate large numbers of individuals wishing to address the board, the presiding officer may make adjustments to the public comment procedures, including adjusting with the public comment will occur during the meeting. Recording agenda items, continuing agenda items to a later meeting, providing expanded opportunity for public comment, or establishing an overall time limit for public comment and adjusting the time allotted for each speaker. However, no individual shall be given less than 1 minute to make comments. A speaker will be given up to 3 minutes to address the board. If, however, the total number of speakers seeking to address the board at a meeting exceeds 5, the per speaker time limit may be reduced to 1 minute. In an event, a speaker be given less than 1 minute to address the board. This comment period is not intended for the presentation of complaints. The board only considers complaints that remain unresolved after they have been addressed through proper administrative channels and have been placed on the agenda. For further information on these requirements, contact the superintendent. So those requirements have been met. Our first speaker will have 3 minutes, Mandy Soto, about the high school choral director.
And if you may, I want to ask the secretary to keep time, please.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
My question to the board and to the superintendent is this: why is our head choral director's job posted as open for the 24-25 school year? We have a head director. She applied for, interviewed for, and was hired for the position of head choral director by the principal and a hiring committee, but within 2 hours was demoted to assistant director because another person was hired without the knowledge of the principal or the hiring committee. There were issues from day one, so parents got together, and I was to speak on her behalf at an earlier board meeting, but was told by the superintendent I did not need to speak because they had made changes and that she had the job, only to find out that she was only interim director and was expected to reapply, re-interview, and just hope that she got the job again, one that she had already been offered, a job she had already been offered that was taken away from her. Now, after jumping through hoops, her job is now posted again for the next year. I will say this: we don't have people waiting in line to come to work in PISD. I worked here, I know. In fact, we have long-term substitutes in core subjects in every building in our district because we don't have enough teachers. So please, please tell me why, when we have someone with experience who has come into our district and forged relationships with coworkers, parents, and students, and has done the job of more than one person because she had no assistant director, why are we trying to run her off?
Okay. Thank you. And now we have Ashley Mayberry on policy changes. You'll have 3 minutes as well.
I come here tonight to thank you for what you do and the many hours that you've put in to our district, for our district. And I ask that you keep working for our Plainview High School students. The policy changes that are before you or going to come before you tonight do nothing to address the issues of inequality between the two high schools. The issues were brought to Dr. Sanchez when they were first discovered almost a year ago by former Advanced Academics Coordinator Elisa Carter in a meeting where she was told to keep quiet and that it wasn't going to change. Nor do they address any of the issues of unbalanced opportunities in the 3 grievances brought before you in October by myself and 2 other families. The proposed changes, while needed to help the students trying to take college physics online without an in-person professor, once again help only Plainview Collegiate students. Please do not stop here. The majority of your high school students are enrolled at PHS, not Collegiate. Please remember the PHS students and the issues that Collegiate has created for them. Remember the ones who chose to be high school students while they're in high school and college students when they're in college. These students still deserve an excellent education and opportunities to succeed. Please keep working to adjust policy to account for having 2 high schools competing for the same 30 spots to make it into the top 10% of their class. Thank you again for what you do and the time that you spend doing it.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our public comments.
This time, Mr. President, we do have ROTC. We have Chief Brantley, who has a recognition for Gil Garcia, a senior at PHS. Chief?
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Mia Garcia. She's a senior, been in ROTC 4 years, and has applied and been selected for a 4-year scholarship to the University of New Mexico in the NROTC college. She'll be working under a captain and a lieutenant in that university system. And upon completion of her degree in biomathematics, had to look that up. She will be commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy.
Wow.
Or a second lieutenant in the Army or the Marine Corps. Now, anyone who's been in the military understands the immense responsibility that follows with this commission. A responsibility that, unless you've been in the military, I do not possibly have the time to explain it this evening. I also do not have the time, but I want to share the possibilities of the harm's way that she will eventually undergo. And that's what I'd like to recognize is we hear, and especially in education, so much negative about Gen Zers. Well, here stands a Gen Zer that has accepted the responsibility to one day move into a capacity where lives could be at stake, even her own. And if she stays in the military, she could move all the way to captain position, which is a 4-bird colonel, potentially even admiral. Just depends on where she sets her limits. And may I also mention that in PHS, there are nearly 1,400 students there. And a great number of them would qualify for this scholarship, a great number. But you see before you one that is applied and accepted it. Because you can be selected, but it's up to the individual to accept it and everything that I just said. And that, to me, is worth gold. I've been doing this for 15 years, and she is my sixth, only sixth. I emphasize only. That's not a good ratio. Not really happy about that. It's not because him and I don't work hard enough to get them there. The problem is they don't want to apply to get there. So, yes, I'm singling her out above other students because she's earned it and she deserves it at this point in her life. I thank her. I thank her family, Mr. and Mrs. Penny. I thank this board and this school for helping her reach these accomplishments. And above all, I thank God. Above all. Mia, would you like to say anything? Oh, you sure? You won't ever get this opportunity again.
I would like to thank Chief for always pushing me because I didn't even want to apply for it, but he made me. But I'm glad I did because I always thought of going to college, but I never wanted to go because I didn't want to have debt. So now I have that full ride scholarship and I can do what I love to do, which is military. I can do both now. So that's amazing. That's all I have to say. So. And my parents. I love my parents.
We would love to get you and Chief and your family. We'd like to get y'all all up here for a picture, please.
Thank
I'm
you.
very proud of you.
Oh, well,
You'll all get in the picture.
I was reminded to mention the value of the scholarship. It's just under $200,000.
Wow.
Can I get one of just the chocolate? Yeah. Okay, ready? One, two, or maybe we're gonna app. One, two. Let me do. Okay, one, two.
Okay, here goes. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Looks good.
Okay. All right.
You go ahead.
Yes, sir. All right, our next presentation is from Synergy Sports. This is an exciting opportunity that we are putting before you, and this presentation has also gone before the Plainview City Council, and it's an opportunity to bring in a event center slash sports facility to benefit youth sports in Plainview, as well as an opportunity to provide our community with an asset that provides flexibility for all different types of other activities that includes not just youth sports, but also our UIL sanctioned sports, and then some activities for the general public as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jason, and he will provide the presentation. And then at the end, if y'all will please write down your questions, and then at the end, it's a great opportunity to ask some questions as we begin down this road. Okay, it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Dr. Sanchez. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Perfect. Members of the board, appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for having me. I met some of you at the city council meeting here a month or so ago, but wanted the opportunity to get in front of you guys as a group and go back through a very similar presentation of kind of what we were asked to do by the city, and then as that evolved into including the school district in these conversations and in the plans for what this thing could be. What came of our assessment and our recommendations, and what the next steps are, and then what this can mean for not just Plainview but for the region. So as a little bit of a background, an introduction to get started. My name is Jason Boudry. I own Synergy Sports. We are based just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so we are a sports consulting firm, primarily work with municipalities or municipal entities. So cities, counties, school districts, sports commissions, some states as entities in and of themselves. We do work with some nonprofits and some private groups, but by and large, we work with municipalities. We have an entire side of what we do for colleges and universities, and really, to try to define it is a little hard, but we help our clients figure out sports in very broad terms. And so we've got about 30, 35 projects that are in development around the country. Again, probably 95% of those with cities or towns or colleges and universities. And so our process typically falls into a couple of phases. The first phase, and this is where we're kind of transitioning from phase 1 to phase 2 in Plainview, but the first phase of what we do is assess the need, and that's the kind of the stereotypical feasibility study. And so when the city manager reached out to me here several months ago, they were wanting to contemplate, what could sports look like in Plainview? You can anecdotally kind of sit around conference room tables and debate whether you need more baseball fields or soccer fields or basketball courts or all of the above. And that's a great perspective to have. You can ask the community what they want, and that's a great perspective to have. And what was missing was, well, what does the data say that we need? And that's the piece that we're able to satisfy. And so our process for this first phase was to look at the data. Look at the data in Plainview. Look at the data in the areas around Plainview. Where are there opportunities? Where is there competition? Is there enough population? Is there enough disposable income? And then, if those things check out, where should we put our resources? Should they be in fields? Should they be in courts? Should they be in hockey rinks? Should they be in swimming pools? And then, assuming we figure that out, well, what's it going to cost to build that? And what's it going to cost to operate that? And then what are the benefits to the city and to the region if we do all of those things? And so that's what we were asked to do as part of this feasibility study. And so as we worked through our process, we ended up creating about a 150-page feasibility study. And I narrowed it down to about 15 slides. And so we'll go through this, fairly quickly, and then we'll leave time at the end for questions. And so the executive summary of this was, we found that it was feasible and viable to develop an indoor sports complex in the Plainview region, or in the city of Plainview. And the benefits of developing an indoor sports facility would be the quality of life, which encompasses your community uses, which encompasses you guys, right? So school use, community rec use, YMCA use, those sorts of recreational sport opportunities. There's definitely a benefit there. But then beyond that, there's a sports tourism benefit that the city and the region can realize. And so sports tourism, differing from community rec or quality of life, is the economic benefit of sports. And so that's hosting tournaments and hosting wrestling meets and cheer and dance competitions and anything else that you can put into a really big building. And so we looked at the demographics, we looked at the socioeconomics in 3 different regions. The local region, which is within roughly 30 minutes or 30 miles, 60 miles, and then 120 miles. Each of those groups of people have different characteristics that play into whether or not we recommend developing an indoor sports complex in Plainview. And so we noted those different opportunities to capitalize on the different assets. Again, an asset is a basketball court, a field, a diamond. Those are all sport assets. And so what we found was that there is the ability and the opportunity to host both really, really big tournaments, 100+ team basketball tournaments or volleyball tournaments, wrestling tournaments, cheer and dance competitions, pickleball, and the list goes on. We can talk about that more later. But beyond that, it exponentially expands the school district's abilities and capabilities to offer more sport opportunities for school kids, to have a centralized place for games and tournaments, state tournaments. It gives the school district an event center. It gives the school district a place for performing arts. It gives the school district a place for graduations and performances. And so there's a natural cohesiveness with what the school district's wants and needs are, what the community's wants and needs are, and what the sports tourism opportunity is. And we'll talk about that in a second, but they're very symbiotic in how they operate and how they fit together. Sports tourism is typically a weekend driver. Quality of life, community use, school district use is primarily a weekday driver. And so those things, again, complement each other very well. Having that mix also complements what we call ancillary development. So additional hotel and hospitality and retail and restaurants and Starbucks and Subways and all of that is a byproduct of the development of these sports facilities. So we know that there's an opportunity. So then we went through an exercise of modeling financially whether or not a facility could be a standalone facility in terms of supporting its own operating expenses. And so we don't like to go into a community and recommend that a community build something and also recommend that they raise everybody's taxes. That can certainly be an option, but if we can find the right size of a facility that can sustain its own operating expenses through programs, tournaments, events, naming rights, through its own revenue, then everybody wins. The community gets a great asset, the school district gets something, that they've been wanting. Plainview becomes a hub and a catalyst for economic growth, and an area where athletes from 2 hours or more away will go to compete. And with those athletes come parents and dollars and things like that. So we were able to right size that facility, and we were able to show through real world financials on other similarly developed, similarly sized facilities, that a facility in Plainview could be self-supporting and self-sustaining. So it wouldn't be a burden on taxpayers. It wouldn't be a burden on the city's general revenues, and it could support itself. That being said, the other recommendation is to leverage the private side or the private sector for operations of the facility. Local governments, school districts, they're great at a lot of things. One of them is not running a sports complex. The private side is really, really good at that. And they are able to balance the needs and wants of the community and the school district with the revenue generating capabilities of sports tourism. And so, some of the other things in here, the next to last bullet point, a secondary ask by Jeffrey was to look at the regional part and, whether or not it would make sense, again, economically, to expand the number of fields. And so we went through that exercise and determined that it would be worth it, both from a quality of life standpoint and from a tournament standpoint, to expand the right way the number of fields at the park. And then the final thing, again, and the reason why I'm talking to you tonight is that there is definitely a pathway to develop a complex in partnership with the school district as well as private side partners. And we'll look at what that private side partnership looks like in just a minute. The next few slides I'm going to go through fairly quickly. It's all numbers and data, but just wanted to put some science behind where these recommendations are coming from. So these three horizontal graphs or data charts are the 30, 60, and 120 mile radii of population that we look at, right? And so in 2023, the 30 mile radii population is roughly 48,000 people. There's a slightly negative growth rate, which is the annual population growth. As you move out to the 60 mile radius, you jump almost 100 or over 100,000 or 400,000 people to 452,000 with a positive growth rate. And then when you get out to 2 hour radius or 120 miles, you're near 1 million in population, again with a slightly positive growth rate. So we look at these numbers to see if there are, is there enough population density to support a facility? And what this tells us is yes, there is. The local population is a bit sparse, but as you move out into that 60 mile radius, I told you earlier that the characteristics of the population changes as you move out. So in the 30 mile radius, these are going to be your local kids. They're going to come to after school programs. They're going to come to summer camps. They're going to come to school functions and that sort of thing. They're going to be your most regular users, and their families are going to be the most regular users of this facility. As you move out to 60 miles, where your population is 461,000, these kids and families are coming a little less frequently, but they're coming to a summer camp. They're coming to a winter break camp. They're not necessarily coming to an after-school program on Tuesday afternoon, but they could, depending on where they live in that circle. This second population pocket, they start to contribute more towards economic impact, right? So if they come in for a weekend tournament, their families are going to eat at a restaurant. They're going to spend money at a gas station, that sort of thing. And as you move out to the largest circle, 963,000 in population, they're going to come the least frequent. They're not coming, 2 hours for an all-day summer camp and then have to go back home. But they are coming a handful, half a dozen times, 10 times a year for tournaments, right? Basketball tournaments, volleyball tournaments, wrestling meets, whatever the case may be. And they're contributing the most to economic impact. They're staying in a hotel for 2 nights. They're eating out every meal. They're, going to the store, they forgot something at Target. So again, each group has different characteristics, but they're very important. So from there, what we look at is what's called sport participation. And so we, again, broke these out into local, sub-regional, and regional. And so the local population, as I mentioned, may be challenged to support Monday through Thursday operations because of the sparseness of the population. Right? There's about 49,000 people within 30 miles. But what we found in digging into the data, there's about 1,700 local youth within that 30-mile radius that participated in a paid basketball program in the past 12 months. About 935,000 participated in volleyball, 800 participated in football, and then we lumped together, some of these categories that are outdoor categories: ultimate frisbee, softball, baseball, and tennis made up about 2,500 participants. What we also did was what you can see here, this MPI. And so MPI is based on a 100 being average, what the sport participation rate is in Plainview as compared to the national average. So basketball is 13 points lower than the national average. Volleyball is 11 points higher. Football is roughly on par with the national average. And we didn't do one for ultimate frisbee because there's 4 sports lumped in here. So what that tells us is, for basketball at 87, there's either not enough opportunity for kids to play basketball or not enough kids to actually play basketball. What we know with 1,700 kids, it's likely that there's not enough opportunity or facilities for them to play basketball rather than not enough kids to play basketball. And so then as we move out into these other radius circles, right, sub-regional is 60 miles, right? It jumps up to 20,000 basketball, 9,000 volleyball, football, and those other field sports. Things are starting to look a lot better. Right? So now we're 2 points higher than the average in basketball, 13 points higher in volleyball, and again, we're still pretty, on average in football. And as we move out to the regional population, we're at 40,000 basketball, 20,000 volleyball, 17,000 football. And so again, volleyball's picking tail. In every category, they're above the national average in terms of participation. Basketball kind of moved down, so it's a little bit more in line with average, and football stayed about where it was across the board. And so what this tells us is that there are opportunities on the indoor side to provide more opportunities, more access to facilities than there currently are. And so as we look at what those radius circles look like, this kind of gives you, again, a real quick overview of where a 2-hour radius circle encompasses, where a 1-hour radius circle encompasses, and then where your 30-mile radius circle includes. And so you can see, as you develop a sports tourism focused model, you're reaching way out, right? Well past Amarillo, well to the east, well to the west. And so there's a lot of opportunity from a sports tourism standpoint. And then as you get closer, there's enough population for a quality of life type of facility. We then looked at competitors. Plainview is in the red circles with the white dots around it. Each of these other markets also are competitors. And so they all have their own radius circles. And as radius circles overlap, the closer you are to the center point of a particular circle, the more competition there is. So you can see, and you guys know this anecdotally, Amarillo has an indoor complex. Lubbock has an outdoor complex. Some of y'all may have heard there is an indoor and outdoor complex being developed in Odessa. And then just for reference, there are facilities in Oklahoma City, and you can see those radius circles start to get close to each other from a Plainview facility standpoint and an Oklahoma City standpoint. Since they don't overlap, there is likely not a lot of competition. And so when we look at this, again, what this tells us, and we kind of pointed what each of these other facilities will include. When you look at field sports, Lubbock is your major competitor. And so, developing additional fields at the regional park, we would market to the north, we would market to the northwest, the northeast, to the east, so that anybody coming, from those directions to Lubbock would come through Plainview, and you can intercept some of that traffic with the right facility in Plainview. Same thing goes for the Netplex in Amarillo. So it is a quasi-competitor. It has 4 basketball courts, which is not large enough to host any sort of significant tournament, which 4 basketball courts turns into 13 volleyball courts and these other bullet points. So it is more of a local and sub-regional facility. A lot of your kids, a lot of school district kids likely go there because it's the only place around. But in looking at what a facility in Plainview could be developed as, and we'll get to this in a second on the next slide, the recommendation for a facility would be a minimum of 6 courts, potentially 8 courts in an indoor facility. And so, again, if I'm outside of the local market of Amarillo, and I have the choice of going to Plainview, where there's 6 courts or 8 courts and a lot of other amenities within the facility, or I go to Netplex in Amarillo with their 4 basketball courts, my buying habits or my consumption habits would take me more often to Plainview. And so we want to be able to, again, right-size this facility so that it's built with the right approach in mind. The facility in Odessa, just kind of to round this slide out, is a big facility. It's got both indoor and outdoor components, both soccer fields and diamond fields, and it's a 10-court facility. And so that would be a sort of competitor to the south, but it still opens up this entire, from west to east region and into the Dallas area. So as we look at what that recommended indoor facility looks like, again, we're talking about a minimum of 6 courts, and you can see what that turns into. 6 futsal courts, indoor pickleball courts, volleyball courts. We could have listed a dozen other things from cheer, dance, gymnastics, wrestling, and then, martial arts and again, a ton of other things. But it also, from a Convention and Visitors Bureau standpoint, it's also a 75,000 square foot convention center. It's a conference facility. It's a place to hold trade shows, RV shows, boat shows, whatever the case may be. And so in looking at that facility design, 6 to 8 courts, about 100,000 square feet, maybe up to 125,000, gives the city, the school district, this group, the highest potential for revenue and economic impact. If it's larger than that, if it's a 10-court facility, a 12-court facility, that looks great on paper, the pictures look great, but the reality is that it's overbuilt. And so there ends up being a lot of dead time. And operating expenses remain constant, but revenue can't keep up with it. A smaller facility puts you in the same boat as the Netflix, where you can't accommodate sports tourism level tournaments. And so we feel fairly confident that a 6 to 8 court facility is the right size in a Plainview market. And so then what we did, again, this is just for conceptual purposes. This is by no means what a final version of a facility would look like. It just gives you an idea of a layout and what a six basketball court facility could lay out to be. When we design these facilities, there's certainly the sports aspect to it, right, where you see all the basketball courts. That's also the convention conference space. But there's oftentimes a non-sport community component to this. And so that could be fitness, right, strength and conditioning as it's pictured. Leasable space, which a lot of times we will find a medical partner to lease space within a sports and event center or sports and rec center to see their patients, to see their clients, but then to also offer an athletic trainer or a physician to be on site during tournaments, during school games, or what have you. Certainly there's concessions, there's retail space, there's conference rooms. But then as we kind of drill down, as we go through this process, we may want to include tutoring rooms or classrooms or a computer lab or something for workforce development. All of those things are certainly on the table as we get more into the actual design of what a facility in Plainview could include. And so again, it marries sports, recreation, community, and then the education side from, not just the school district's sports needs, but in furthering the academic capabilities of what this thing can do too. So we looked at locations. The regional park is out of the question. You can't build a building in a floodplain. And so the regional park, again, is best suited to develop additional fields, to continue renovating the current fields that are being renovated now, and look somewhere else to do an indoor facility, which takes us to the same place that the school district had originally planned for their event center. And so what we look at is, floodplain, right? And the only part of it that's in a watershed area is near these detention ponds. We look at adequate acreage. There's plenty of space, in this square. We look at transportation and ease of access, right? It's right off the interstate, easily accessed, easily visible. And so, and the fact that this is owned by the city, makes this an easy option, easy first choice for where to develop. And so, again, this is where you guys were planning your event center. And so as we looked at the integration between the school district and the city and sports tourism, that kind of gets us to where this concept of public-private partnership comes into play. So the public side is the school district and the city, and the public side, as part of the public-private partnership, contributes things to the project, right? And so the city contributes land, they could contribute some capital, the school district contributes some capital to the project, and that still leaves a gap, right? And so I didn't specifically call it out, but on a previous slide, the development of this type of facility that we're talking about is somewhere around $30 million, between $25 and $35 million. So if you're talking about a $30 to $35 million complex, everybody loves it on paper, everybody loves the pictures and what it can do. There's some money that's brought together by the school district, by the city, but there's still a gap, right? So then the question becomes, well, how do we pay for it? Well, like I said before, you could always raise taxes. You could put out a bond. You could put it into the city's long-term development plan or their capital budget. And all of those things can be used, but they're not very efficient, and they're not, some of them aren't very popular. And so where this partnership makes sense is that the private side is also really good at finding capital. And so one of the ways that we work with our clients is that we have the ability, if we vet a project and we find that we have a high degree of confidence in the financial performance of it based on the market, that we've got resources to go to on the private equity side to bridge the gap in funding. And so we'll talk about what that looks like in a second. But that's, in essence, what a public-private partnership looks like. The public side brings some things to the table. The private side brings capital. The private side can also bring operational expertise and experience. And so when you look at what the city needs and wants and what the school district needs and wants, the operator is there to execute on what those needs and wants are, first and foremost, and then to backfill that with sports tournaments. So a practical example is, if this were to move forward, the school district would be the first ones to say, well, we need the gymnasium on this day, this day, this day, and this day. If it's if it rains one day, we might have to move an outdoor practice indoors. Great. That's awesome. You can do all of those things. And then the city will say, well, the city wants to use it on this date, and this date, when the school district's not. The private operator is there to say, great, we'll make sure everything goes according to plan. And then whatever's left, the private operator will go out and secure tournaments, events that don't conflict with school district events or games or tournaments or city requirements for the facility. And so there's a kind of a misperception on, well, if we have a private operator, they're just going to take all of the weekends and we won't be able to use it. It's almost 180 degrees from that. So the school district's needs and their priorities come first. They have first right to schedule. They have first right to, to bump something else during the week. The only time it really becomes an issue is on the weekends. And again, typically, there's not a lot of school district athletic things on the weekend. But all of those things, the operator works after, for the benefit of the school district and the city. And so there's typically not that big of an issue with operations of the facility. So now we looked at what this can do, what it can look like, how big it is, all of those things. We put together a financial model based on real world facilities that we've developed, that our partners have developed, to say, well, what could this generate? And like I mentioned before, can it stand on its own? And so this is a lot of numbers. We're not going to go through all of this, but what we looked at as we go through here is your bottom line number, right? So your net income. Is this facility able to pay its operating expenses, which are the middle section, and its and repay the private equity that was used to help fund the facility, which is in red? Can it still come out positive? And in our modeling, it can. And so it can, generate on average about $300,000 a year in annual profit, which would then go back to the city and the school district in proportionate shares based on whatever you guys work out between you and the city. And so what this does is this checks the box for us that it's financially viable and feasible. It can stand on its own. It doesn't burden taxpayers. It doesn't raise, you don't have to issue bonds or affect credit for the city. And so this checks a big box for us. And so finally, on the economic side, we look at economic impact. And so we talked about that a little bit earlier. Again, I'm not going to go through all this, but The things that we look at most are in the top left and top right, your very bottom row. So what this is telling us is that this facility would benefit the region by creating or sustaining about 278 jobs. Now, that's not to say that 278 new jobs will be created at this facility. It's saying that within the region, within that 60-mile region, there are about 278 jobs that will be affected. Some of those jobs will be directly impacted, 211. And so what that means is, if I'm coming into Plainview to bring my kid to a tournament, I'm going to stop at a gas station. I'm going to stop and stop at Chick-fil-A. I'm going to stop at a McDonald's. My going to McDonald's directly impacts that employee. And if enough of me go to enough McDonald's, well, then that McDonald's may have to hire more people. And so that's what direct employment impact is. Direct spending is around $18 million. And so annually, about $18 million will come into Plainview and the surrounding area directly, going to Starbucks, going to the gas station, spending the night in the hotel, those sorts of things. And so total economic output is roughly $30 million per year in the region. And so again, if I go to McDonald's and I spend money, that's direct impact. If that McDonald's worker then goes to the gas station, well, that supports that job, and that's indirect economic impact. And then that gas station worker goes to the store and buys something, well, that supports that job, and that contributes to induced economic impact. So those three levels of economic impact are what give us $30 million a year in total output by people coming to Plainview that otherwise wouldn't have come. And then on the right side, this is more for the government side, but this facility will directly or indirectly generate about $320,000 in tax revenue for the city, $500,000 for the county, and then up from there to the state and to the federal level. And so this has a very big economic impact on Plainview, hands down. Beyond that, it has a visitor impact. And so we looked at the visitor impact for an indoor complex, and then what would happen if 6 total fields were developed at the regional park. And what we found was an indoor complex could reasonably expect to bring between 125 and 150,000 more people to Plainview than are currently coming. And the way tournaments are set up and events and that sort of thing, that would generate between 24 and 30,000 additional hotel room nights. The first thing that tells us is there's not enough hotels in Plainview. And so that leads to some of that ancillary development we were talking about, where now there's a Holiday Inn Express, a Hampton Inn, a Motel 6, or whatever, that have become very interested in coming to capitalize on the hotel room night stay. On the baseball and softball side, there is impact there as well, with 10 to 15,000 visitors, and between 1,200 and 2,000 hotel rooms. So again, very big economic impact, very big visitor impact, very big impact on the hotel and hospitality industry. And so when we look at funding options, right, we kind of talked through this. You can issue a bond, you can put it in your capital improvement plan, and the P3, the public-private partnership, municipal lease, is the funding mechanism that more and more cities, counties, municipalities are moving towards because of the financial capabilities of the private side, and also when we can show that operations can support expenses, it becomes a net zero for the municipality. And I'll explain that in a second. So again, I'm not going to read through all of this stuff, but the basic premise of this is, let's say there's a $20 million gap in funding. The private side can bring that $20 million to the project and turn it into a lease back to the city. So we're able to then take the project on as a private project, build it exactly the way that we modeled it, fund it from the beginning. Once it opens with a private operator, it gets leased back to the city, or the city. When I say city, it's city/school district partnership. All revenues then go back to the city and the school district. It gives you the most flexibility on public use time. And the only way that we recommend a municipal lease is that second to last bullet point, that the financial model has to pencil, it has to show positive cash flow, and the ability to meet both operating expenses and cover the lease expense. If not, we'll suggest it as an option, but we'll let the municipality know that, hey guys, if you want to do this, you can. You're just going to have to subsidize the cost of this annually for X number of years. You may have to put in $100,000 a year, $500,000 a year to cover operating expenses. And some municipalities are fine with that. Some municipalities, that's a deal breaker. They say, no, we don't want to do it. This thing has to sustain itself. Other cities and communities will say, well, if we're getting 125,000 people and 25,000 hotel room nights, we as a city, we're fine with subsidizing this because the economic potential is worth the cost. And so there's the ability to do that. But what we're able to show through our financial modeling is that this will not only pencil, it will not only meet its operating expenses and pay its lease, it will return profit to the school district and to the city so that revenues can be used for, or that those monies can be used to enhance other things, right? So for the school district, you may have other priorities that $150,000 a year, can be applied to. The city may have other park projects or other sports projects that they want to accomplish, and now they have $150,000 a year that they can do it. And so then we, as a consulting firm, we stay involved throughout pre-development, throughout construction, and then we hand it over to one of our operating partners for the operations and the event management side. And so, we're not an operator, we're not a general contractor. We partner with all of those folks. And so we've got some great partnerships on, 25 or 30 facilities that are currently operating, as well as the ones that are in development now. So that's kind of the premise of a public-private partnership. And so then we talk real quick, this is the last slide, I promise. I know I've been talking a lot. Kind of what the next steps are. And so there is kind of a governmental step. There's a legal step. There's a step that I'm not really involved in, and that involves you guys and the city. And then from there, the project can proceed. And so at some point, right, the first step is that city council and the school district come to an agreement that this is something that you guys both want to do. City council will approve the project, school board will approve the project, and the developmental timeline that we will put together. We can certainly come back and give public presentations and have information sessions, and we'll start to design the facility as the key stakeholders want it, share the renderings and images and that sort of thing. We'll work with the city to finalize the legal requirements, the logistical requirements, work with economic development and to make sure that everything follows the right process. We may look to get public input on, hey, this is what we're thinking, but we'd love to hear from you. That certainly goes for other key stakeholders, the families that are obviously involved in the school district. And then from there, we started what's called pre-development. And so that's a 4-month-ish process of, finalizing architecture, engineering, looking at the site, placing this on the site exactly where it's going to go, doing surveys and samples and that sort of thing. separate from what we're talking about here, you know, we're going to look at the regional parts of the city and that sort of thing. And then from there, it moves from pre-development into construction. The construction timeline is roughly 18 months. And so from the time that we say go in pre-development to the time the doors open is roughly a 24-month process. Certainly with fields and things like that, those typically will come online faster. But 125,000 square foot building is a really big building to build. Especially when there's no beams and it's 40-foot tall ceilings and that sort of thing. But that's generally what the timeline looks like. And so I'm done, I promise. That's the last slide. One of the things that we're very passionate about is truly, and this is our slogan, is to improve lives. You know, bring families and communities together through sports and recreation. So I appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer whatever questions that you guys might have. I would say if there's what we call those in the weeds questions, Dr. Sanchez has my email address. You're welcome to get that. We can talk offline and go into as much detail as any of you guys want to go. But I'll take any questions that y'all might have.
And we did have 3 board members attend the initial presentation at the city council meeting. We had, I believe it was Ms. Rivera, Ms. Ray, and Ms. De La Garza. So we had 3 who were able to attend and hear the first presentation. And then I did ask them if they felt this was something that should come before the full board. The 3 felt that it was. And so here is an outstanding opportunity. This is something that we had talked about in our phase 3 of redesigning the district and updating the district and providing options and opportunities so that our playoff games aren't in Abernathy because they have better facilities than Plainview. And so this is an ability to begin moving in that direction to where a 5A doesn't have to borrow the facilities of a smaller school district because they're better than ours. And so this is something that we've been talking about. It's something that we have some capital set aside, something that we've looked at for some time. But knowing post-COVID, the cost of everything, it's not something that we can do by ourselves. And so this is an excellent opportunity to have this type of facility within our community, be able to contribute to that facility, and then over a series of years, in partnership with the city, this facility to become something that continues to drive economic development in Plainview and the surrounding community. So I'd asked if y'all would write questions down as y'all were listening to the presentation. So I'll turn it back over to Mr. Soto to address that aspect.
Board, you got any questions, comments pertaining to the presentation that was before us?
Hey, Jason, this is Danny Salazar. Just a couple questions. I do have a lot of questions on this, but we'll take them offline if we need to for time's sake. But just a couple of things that's standing out to me. On the private sector side, the cost, is this cost covered by the self-sustaining budget? And who determines what private sector is going to manage that?
So, yeah, the first part of your question, yes. So, and we don't have to go back to it now. I can send over this presentation. But
Sure.
as we look at the financial model, there was a lease expense in red that we built into the model to see if it could support that expense. The lease expense, and again, this is a little into the weeds, but it's okay, is, again, let's say the facility is $30 million and the private side is coming in with 20. And I don't know if that was the example that we modeled, but for example's sake, that lease, that $20 million would be turned into a lease, which is amortized over 30 years. with no prepayment penalty. Payments don't start until operations begin. There's ways to defer that even further. And so what we find in the real world is the amortization is based on 30 years. In reality, through operations, through sponsorships, communities and municipalities are able to pay down their lease and pay off their lease within about 12 to 17 years. And a lot of that has to do with that private side operator, because their goal is to maximize revenue when time and space permit. And so their job is to go out and find tournaments and find users and rental groups and organizations that want to be in the facility when the school district isn't and when the city is. Does that answer your question?
It did, and it also answered another one of my questions, so thank you there. The last one that I'll have, on your conceptual floor plan model, we saw 6, 8 basketball courts in that model. How do we close the gap on, or is there a way to close the gap on putting 2 courts, like in a basketball playoff game here in West Texas? You can draw 3,000 people, to a game. And how does that look like just putting it on 1 court?
Yeah, so, and this gets in, this gets away from the picture I showed you.
Yeah.
You could show you 25 other 6-court facilities that all look different. I can show you an 8-court facility with a dedicated championship court. And so where we go from here is that pre-development where we get the key stakeholders in a room and say, what's important to you? Well, having a championship court or having seating for 3,000 is important to us. Okay, great. Let me write that down. And then we take all of that stuff and throw it in a blender, and we come back with your plan. Not a plan for somewhere in Mississippi or somewhere in Florida or somewhere in Wisconsin, but based on what you told us, the city told us, and it's going to come back and look and feel and do everything that you want it to, right? And so if we say, hey, having a dedicated court that seats 2,500, and that's also our graduation area, perfect, great, we'll go draw that. And so then we can be efficient in our drawing and in our architecture and come back with the things that make a Plainview facility a Plainview facility.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the due diligence on the information that you've given us tonight. Mr. President, that's all the questions I have.
Anybody else?
I have several too, and I know that we could probably get into, like you said, more of those details. But first of all, I was a little bit confused on this. The partnership with Plainview ISD would just be the indoor facility, not the outdoor complex. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
This is, and for those of you that were at the city council presentation, this was essentially the presentation that I gave to city council, which included their request of looking at the regional park.
Okay, and then, so then my next question is, this would be a little bit unusual, I would say, for this area, for a school district, city partnership to come together with this kind of a complex. I think it's a really cool idea. How many other districts, this kind of partnership do you all have, especially maybe in the southern area, West Texas area?
Yeah, so you guys in the city like each other. That's awesome. Because that can't necessarily be said with a lot of other communities. And I think that's really kind of at the crux of this. The Odessa facility, there will be a partnership of sorts. I think what sets you guys apart from other communities is the availability and the ability of capital that you have as a school district. In most communities, there is a partnership between the city and the school district. It's more on the use side than it is on the ownership side. So the school district would inevitably have priority scheduling and either no facility use fee or a low facility use fee. In other parts of the country, you said in West Texas, there's not a whole lot in West Texas. So there is the facility in Odessa that I know about. There is a potential other facility, not in West Texas, that will have a school district partnership. Our operating partners, we've got two, Dr. Sanchez and I and Jeffrey talked with one of them yesterday. So he could start to ask some questions on that, and that came up. And they have a school partnership where the school contributed capital. We also have another operator that is based in Florida that operates facilities across the South. And most of their projects also have school district partnerships with the municipality. I would have to look in to see if any of them were capital partnerships or if they were more just use partnerships.
And that's what distinguishes this project is we've been looking at something like this for some time and discussing it. And so we have set capital aside for it. And as Jason said, I mean, the school district and the city, we work well together, and we've worked well through the bond projects, and we've worked well in exchanging parks for, space to build North Elementary and vice versa. And so it's interesting that the company is Synergy. I mean, the synergy that we have with the city makes this possible. It's not as common, I would say. I mean, usually there are lines that are drawn between city and school district. And we're fortunate that that's not the case here, that we work really well together because we have a common vision. And that really is to provide for our community what families and children have in our neighboring communities. And we would just like to be able to do that together and do it better than the others.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
no, I couldn't agree more.
So the
But,
one in Odessa does include maybe not a capital partner, but does include some of their school districts or the Odessa School District?
Yeah, so it's kind of an inevitable thing, right? I mean, if you build a big box with a bunch of basketball courts in it, the school district's gonna wanna use it.
Right.
And so it gives whatever community we're talking about the opportunity for the school district to expand what they can offer or lessen the load on a particular school. And so there's that natural partnership. That partnership typically ends, long before there's capital, certainly. And it's really, again, limited to, hey, school district, we'll let you schedule your events before we go find tournaments. And it's just kind of, the olive branch sort of thing. But it's a very loose partnership if we're going to use the word partnership. It's more of a, scheduling priority.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And some of the things that we can talk about later, as if this is an item that we want to put on the agenda for action in an upcoming board meeting, are some of those things, such as the different types of surfaces that can roll out temporarily for different purposes, the ability to put in a wooden center court that is assembled before major events and then disassembled and moved out when you have use for all of the different floors, different kinds of seating. So all those things are a possibility. And that was part of the conversation yesterday with the technology that's available. If you have the space and it's indoor and it's heated and it's cooled, then you can do a whole lot of different things with the floor space. And again, the opportunity to have that indoor heated and cooled is the big piece. And on the stressful side of it, it doesn't stress Parks and Rec and it doesn't stress athletics because we schedule what we need and then the private management company schedules everything else to make it work. And that's a beautiful part of it because we don't have to do that because that's not our thing. That's not what we're good at. But we do know what our volleyball and basketball schedule looks like. And we do know what nights we need those. And then we kind of have an idea of when the weather gets really crazy and baseball and softball might need an indoor facility here and there during the week. A lot of this, the great thing with not being the first to do it is there are a lot of lessons out there that we can glean from some of the other entities that have already moved forward with this type of a partnership. But again, it's exciting to be at this point.
Yeah,
And,
you brought it up. The surfacing technology that's out there now is really amazing, where you could go from a 6-court facility and in the matter of a couple of hours, turn it into an indoor soccer field. And roll out turf and have it already lined and throw some goals up and play soccer inside. You can drop batting cages from the ceiling. You can roll it all up and, roll out a pickleball surface and roll that back up and put down wrestling mats or a cheer floor. It gives you that flexibility to plug and play in a way that you just can't do with outdoor assets, right? I mean, you're not limited by the weather, unless it lightnings, but you can play when it's raining, when it's 1,000 degrees out, when it's, 5 degrees out. And you can play all your sports in it. So, yeah, I mean, from that sort of technology to true technology, and we'll get into that later, but there's just a lot of possibilities. So, and you brought this up, and one of the things that we typically will suggest is, what comes up next is, okay, well, what's next? How do we go? What's the next step? And so this is the same thing I told Jeffrey is, my suggestion is potentially creating a subcommittee, both on the city side and on the school district side that I can work with, work out all these details, bring it back to the respective boards and councils. And so that way things get done a lot more efficiently. But I'll leave it up to you to decide, your process and talking with Jeffrey and the city and that sort of thing. But we pretty well understand the path forward and how to get there. And really think this could be an amazing project.
So again, I hope there's interest on the school district side, and I can get with Mr. Snyder and we can begin talking about what that subcommittee, that working committee would look like, and the level of expertise that we would need on that committee, as well as a good representation of the community on that committee, so that then a path forward can be charted. And then when the time comes, we can take a look at what action we need to take. And then, of course, we would work with Underwood to work through any of the details of contract and whatnot. And we would work with finance and then some of the consultants that we have in that area to take a look at how we leverage assets, capital assets, and how we budget it and what it looks like long-term and so on and so forth. So, I mean, there are models for all of that and pathways for that. But I hope, again, that there's interest to move forward to the next step from the board.
And also, I don't know if anybody else was listening to that, but he did mention Chick-fil-A. Just saying.
And a Target.
Well, I'll send this presentation to Dr. Sanchez, and he can certainly send it out to all of y'all. I'll include my email address, so if you do have other questions, feel free. I don't mind a bit getting on a quick phone call or Zoom or and talking through any of this stuff. So again, thanks for your time. I do really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay. We have a superintendent report. Dr. Sanchez?
Yes.
This week. You.
All right, quickly. I had the opportunity to give Ms. De La Garza and Ms. Ray their homework. And so I assured them that I would give the rest of you your homework this evening. So what's the homework? As being one of 5 boards selected for the HEB Excellence in School Board Leadership recognition in the state of Texas, we have a visit coming up. And so there will be a panel of judges. And if you look within your binder, the last tab gives you the bio of all of the judges. And so you have some career educators in there, you have some financial experts in there, you have some philanthropists in there, you have a whole group of experts who have different lenses. And this group of experts are going to come in to visit with you. And what they want to talk to you about is the Plainview ISD story, because the board was identified because of the Plainview ISD story. How we went from aging facilities that were inadequate with classroom space, contemporary lighting, energy efficiency, heating and cooling, water intrusion, and everything else you can think of. How we went from that to modern facilities, to middle schools, to an intermediate and a junior high, adding gym space, fine art space, updating instructional space, technology. The laptops at the high school have been handed out, and we're about ready to go live with our 4G LTE network for families who don't have access to internet. Plus sports fields, sports facilities, new fine arts facilities, renovation of the auditorium, as well as the addition of soccer. The blessing of a soccer tennis facility and field house, as well as the blessing of a golf field house, so that the kids don't have to dress like Superman in the phone booth or in the car to get ready to go out onto the golf course or courts. There's a whole lot else in the Plainview story, but those are some of the highlights. And you guys helped with the vision. You guys ensured that the budget was proper. You oversaw the recommendations of architects and construction firms and floor plans, as well as timelines and deadlines. And while all that was going on, there are core beliefs and core commitments that are behind me that guided this work, and that was the first thing. There was a board operating handbook that was created, and that was the second thing. And then there were various policies for constituent service and governance that came after that. And so all that's in the binder. And so it gives you an opportunity to go back through and look at all of the things that have been accomplished in the last 6 years. All of the things that you've done, that you've supported, that you've guided, that you've overseen. It's really easy to fixate on the things that aren't perfect, because if we could make it perfect, we could all go home. And sometimes when we fixate on those things that aren't perfect, the continuous work, the things that we don't put to the side, but that we continue to work on, we forget all of the things that we've done, all of the things that have been accomplished. And as you can see, the conversation that we had prior to this report is a continuance of the vision of what this school district can become, and along that journey has begun to become. And as our district seal says, setting the standard in education, you do that with vision, and you do that with hard work, by tackling and taking on the things that for 40 years or more were seemingly impossible, and they become possible. And again, this designation for Plainview ISD to be one of 5 in Texas of over 2,000 school districts, I mean, that's big. And you have Donna ISD, Shailen ISD, Garland ISD, Corpus Christi ISD, and Plainview ISD. That's some excellent company for the board to be with. And so the next step will be the interview. So they'll come in and talk to me about myself and see what I know, and then I'll leave, and then they'll talk to you and see what you guys know, and I know y'all will impress them. I know you'll impress them because y'all have been here through every step of the work. And for the board members that joined in subsequent years, you guys also joined in to do work and have done work. And so, again, this is a culminating moment, a moment to be very proud and not to be too nervous because you're just telling the story of the work. And it's an opportunity to do that. And then they'll visit with a couple of principals, a couple of community leaders, a couple of parents, and a couple of teachers as well, and get their take on things too. And so again, this is very exciting, and it's not so much a binder with your homework as much as it is a binder with the work that you've done and the accomplishments. And there's still space in that binder because there's still work to do, good work to do. So that's all I have for the superintendent's report, other than congratulations, congratulations, congratulations.
All right, board, we got homework to do.
Okay, and now we have the financial audit, is our
Yes.
first business item.
Yes, I would like to introduce Jeremy Stevens from Ike Bailey. He'll be presenting 22-23 fiscal year audit.
All right, good evening, members of the board. Yes, I'm Jeremy Stevens with Ike Bailey. Our firm has completed the audit of the school district for the year ended August 31st, 2023. Have issued those financial statements. I believe a copy of those bound report was left at each of your seats. I also have a brief presentation to cover some of the financial highlights. Before I get into it, though, I do want to say I think the audit went well this year. Did not have any adjusting journal entries as a result of audit procedures. Additionally, we're not reporting any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls. So overall, just kind of a good, clean audit year. So that being said, I'll get into the presentation. Beginning with our independent auditors report, starts on page number 2 of the bound packet, goes on over through page number 5. Summarize the main points up on the slide there. First of all, just begin with our opinion. Let's top of page number 2. States that in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the district. So this is what's known as an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. It then goes on to describe the basis for our opinion, which is that we conducted our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and that we believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. At the bottom of page number 2 is what is known as an emphasis of matter paragraph regarding the adoption of a new accounting standard. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board issued GASB statement number 96 for subscription-based IT arrangements. It was required to be adopted by all governmental entities this fiscal year. And it was a pretty significant change in the way that governmental entities accounted for these subscription-based IT arrangements. Anytime there's a significant change in accounting practice like that, we add an emphasis of matter paragraph in our report, just kind of highlighting that this new standard was adopted. Just kind of, like I said, just kind of highlighting that it was adopted, but it does not impact our opinion. Our opinion is still unmodified. It's still a clean audit report. We're just kind of calling attention to the fact that the district did adopt this accounting standard this year. Moving over on to page number 3 of the bound report at the top, it does describe management's responsibilities for the financial statements, which is that management is responsible for the preparation, the fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Additionally, management is responsible for the design and implementation of internal controls. And then lastly, at the bottom of page number 3, it does describe our responsibilities as auditor. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements and to obtain reasonable assurance that these financial statements are free from material misstatement. There's some additional wording there regarding our approach to internal controls, which is that we gain an understanding of the district's internal controls so we can design our audit procedures. However, we do not test them to an extent that allows us to express an opinion on them. So again, we're not expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls. All right, now jumping ahead to some of the basic financial statements themselves. I'll start on page number 13 with the statement of net position. This particular statement provides a snapshot of all assets and liabilities of the district as of August 31st, 2023 at a consolidated level. Up on the slide, I have a very, very summarized version of that statement along with a comparative column for 2022. You'll see at the end of the current fiscal year, total assets and deferred outflows of resources, about 176.7 million this year. It's about 160.4 million last year. So it did increase about $16.3 million year over year. Largest asset categories, your capital assets, total up to about $116 million this year. In comparison to last year, that's an increase of about $20 million. So you do have had a lot of construction projects going on during the year. Those were wrapping up and finishing up. So capital asset balances did increase about $20 million year over year. Next largest asset categories are your cash and current investments at the top of page number 13. Those two line items sum up to about $40 million this year. In comparison to last year, that's down about $11.5 million. Again, primarily related to those construction projects that were going on. You finished, we're doing those construction projects, spent the money on them, so your cash came down, and then conversely, your capital assets went up on your asset side. As far as liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, about 133 million this year is about 122 million last year. So it did increase about $11 million year over year. That increase is largely being driven by your net pension and your net OPEB liabilities at the TRS pension, the TRS care OPEB plan. Those two line items up on page number 13, you'll see that the net pension liability is up to about 18.5 million this year. The OPEB liability is up to about 10.4 million this year. In comparison to last year, those two line items, they increased about $10 million year over year. So that's what's driving the bulk of your increase in your liabilities. I do remind boards that what that net pension and net OPEB liability represents, the TRS pension plan and OPEB plans that you are a member of, those pension plans that are ran for basically all school districts in the state, they get an audit each year, and each year the state of Texas allocates to each district its proportionate share of the shortfall of assets in that pension plan compared to what the actuaries say the pension plan is going to have to pay out to all current and future retirees. So in total, that TRS pension liability is a really, really big number. You get your proportionate share, which, like I said, was about 19 million this year. And it fluctuates each year based on what the actuaries say the pension plan is going to have to pay out, and also based on investment performance. If investment performance is down, that net pension liability number will go up. So it does fluctuate. Basically, it's kind of recorded at what TRS tells you to record it at. You continue to fund into the plan based on your funding formula, so it's not a liability you're going to have to pay. It's just accounting standards require it to be presented on your financial statements, and it kind of fluctuates based on what TRS says you have to put on your financial statements. So anyways, like I said, if you add it all up, your assets less your liabilities, you get your total net position at the bottom of the page. As you can see on the slide, about 44 million this year is about 38 million last year. So total net position did increase year over year. Next statement that I'll touch on is the balance sheet of governmental funds on page number 15. Again, this statement provides a snapshot of assets and liabilities of the district at year end, but it's presented on what's known as the modified accrual basis of accounting. So this particular statement, its focus is on current assets and current liabilities. So it does not have capital assets on it. It doesn't have any of your debts on it. So there's no bonds payable. There's no lease liabilities or anything of that nature. Additionally, there's not anything related to the pension and the OPEB plans on this particular statement. This is your current assets and your current liabilities. Under this basis of accounting, you'll see total assets at the end of this fiscal year is about 46.7 million this year. It's about 64.6 million last year. So it did decrease year over year by about $18 million, largely due to the decline in assets in your capital projects fund. Again, your capital projects fund had some remaining assets from previous bond issuances and whatnot. You spent those down on construction projects, so your total assets under this basis of accounting decreased. However, since capital assets do not get capitalized under this basis of accounting. That's why you don't see the corresponding increase in capital assets. That's why it shows as a reduction of assets. You'll see that showing up in your cash and investments. You'll see that it's down to about 39.6 million this year. It's about 51 million last year. So that's that decrease of about 11.4 million year over year. Again, that's pretty much all contained to capital projects decrease. Liabilities for the district at the end of this fiscal year, about 14.4 million. Last year is about 15.6 million. So it did decrease a little bit year over year, about $1 million decrease year over year, but fairly comparable as far as liabilities go. And so then if you added up your assets less your liabilities under this basis of accounting, at the end of the current fiscal year, about 32.3 million. Last year is about 49 million. So on this slide, you'll see that the fund balance year over year by each of the categories, so you can kind of see where the fund balance changed year over year. You'll see again that the restricted fund balance is where the majority of that decrease occurred. That restricted fund balance made up at the end of the current fiscal year, about 1.6 million for child nutrition, about 400,000 for debt service, and then 1.5 million remaining for capital projects. So that's what that 3.5 million is made up of this year. But last year, that amount that was restricted for capital projects was quite a bit bigger, and that's where that's showing up in that 16.4 million last year. Again, you spent that down on construction projects, so that restricted fund balance did decrease year over year. The unassigned fund balance is the fund balance available to the district, kind of fund regular operating activities. About 9.4 million this year. One measure you can use to kind of gauge that is to compare it to your average monthly general fund expenditures. Generally, I hear to try to maintain a minimum reserve of somewhere between 2 and 3 times your average monthly general fund expenditures. Based on the fiscal year 2023 expenditures, that 9.4 million, it's a little bit over 2 times your average monthly general fund expenditures. So you're kind of at that minimum reserve there for that as well. I've been meeting with boards this year particularly on this slide, I am reminding all boards that the so-called, as TEA is referring to it, the fiscal funding cliff is coming. I'm sure you've been talking about that, but the district, as well as other districts in the state, have been receiving quite a bit of funding through the COVID programs, through ESSER and whatnot. That funding, it will be coming to an end shortly. Presumably the expenses that have been paid for by that ESSER program will have to come back to the general funds. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, kind of planning for that. But that's what TA is referencing as the fiscal funding cliff, is that ESSER money that y'all have all been enjoying so much for the last few years is going to be running out. So just kind of keep that on your radar as you're planning ahead. All right, last statement that I'm touching on is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance on page 17, basically the income statement of the district. This first slide summarized the revenue sources, pretty comparable year over year, about $71.7 million in each fiscal year. That's made up of your local, state, and federal sources. Local is primarily tax revenues and investment income. So that's why local revenues did increase a little bit this year, because investment rates and investment income did increase year over year. And then you have your state program revenues, which is just your state aid that you receive, and then your federal program revenues, which is all the other programs, ESSER, child nutrition, special education, and so forth that you receive funding for. As far as expenditures of the district, current fiscal year, about 90.5 million. Last year is about 123 million. So it did decrease year over year by about $32.5 million. That decrease is in the capital outlay expenditures. You'll see in 2023, they were still pretty high, 17.4 million this fiscal year, but in the 2022 fiscal year, it was 53.3 million. You had a lot more construction projects going on in 2022. So that did decrease this year as far as those capital outlay expenditures. That's what's driving the bulk of that decrease in expenditure categories. Most of the other expenditure categories pretty comparable if you look at them year over year. All right, and then last 2 reports that I'm going to briefly discuss are at the very back of the bound report. The first one is on page number 79, and it's our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. This particular report, again, it reiterates that we're not expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls. However, if we did report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls or any instances of non-compliance, this is the report that we would identify those to you. Again, happy to report that there are no such items. And then the last report is on page number 81. And that is our reports on compliance that's required by the uniform guidance. Each year, as part of our audit, we perform what's known as a single audit in accordance with the uniform guidance published by the federal government. Basically, what we do is we select some of your federal programs that we determine to be major federal programs, and that's based on selection criteria established by the federal government. And then we perform tests of those programs so that we can express an opinion as to whether the district complied with the requirements of those programs. This fiscal year, we tested the special education cluster and then the ESSER program. And then our opinion for that is located at the top of page 81. Basically states that in our opinion, the district complied with the requirements of those major federal programs. So again, it's an unmodified or clean opinion on compliance for those major federal programs as well. And that is everything that I had prepared. Are there any questions for me?
I do want to make one point, and it's an important point, and that is the fiscal cliff is something that we were aware of from the beginning. And so what we've done is ensured that as those ESSER funds were used, we allocated them in areas that were as closely aligned with single expenditure capital areas as much as possible, so that we wouldn't assume any new or ongoing reoccurring costs with temporary funds. So it's like getting an income tax check and going and buying a new car, but only getting the income tax check one time. You can't do that. And so we approached using the funds that way. And so as you take a look at the audit this year and you take a look at it next year, you'll see that there will be certain reductions in certain areas, but by and large, we accounted for those funds being temporary through our budgeting processes over the last so many years.
Board, any questions? Pertaining to item number 1.
Thank you for your hard work on this. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Yes, we appreciate the relationship with the district, and like I said, it was you have a good staff. They answered all the questions, got everything to us timely, really did help it go quite smoothly. So
The best.
yes.
All right. With that, I'd like to recommend for your consideration and approval, the 22-23 financial audit.
Where do I hear a motion? For item number 1.
I move we approve the 2022-23 financial audit conducted by Odd Bailey LLP.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, 7-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is a employment contract void.
Yes, ma'am, and it's not Brandy Merrick who's having her contract voided for not maintaining her contracted status. So that was one of the spacing anomalies. One of the board members, as we were going over the agenda, said, well, what did Ms. Merrick not take care of? And so this is just a function of an employee who had a 1-year temporary contract and didn't quite get everything across the finish line in time to have a full certification. And so once this employee has a full certification, then you'll see that employee's name on the employment report as a certified teacher. But until then, we can't have the individual on as a certified employee with a contract because the certification hasn't been maintained. So this employee will stay with us as a DOI employee, and we just need y'all's approval of voiding the contract with the understanding that the employee will continue to work with the district under DOI, and that once the employee completes all certification requirements, the employee's name will appear on the employment report. So with that, I'd like to make a recommendation for approval on employment contract, to void the employment contract on item 2.
Board questions, comments? Not hearing none, it's, entertain motion for item number 2.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 7-0, thank you.
Okay. Our third item is campus security stipend.
What we're recommending is $1,500 per semester. Now, we don't want our guardians to feel as if they're only worth $1,500 a semester. But we do feel that other districts are not providing a stipend. We're one of the few, if only, districts that will be providing a stipend for our guardians. And this is because by concealed carrying a firearm and being one of the lines of defenses should we have an active shooter situation, they do put their lives on the line. And so to recognize that, what we'd like to recommend would be a $1,500 stipend a semester, not a year, but a semester. Now, of course, this year there's only one semester left, so it'd be for the semester, but then we would go forward budgeting for both semesters. And again, we looked around and this isn't a common practice. The guardians in other districts are just guardians and they're just, and there isn't a change in their compensation, but we do feel that they are providing an important service and therefore we should provide a stipend. And of course, if the person moves on or whatnot, it is just a stipend. Or if the person decides, I don't want to do it anymore, it's a stipend. So it doesn't change their employment status with us. It's just a stipend as long as they continue to abide by the training and abide by all of the standards that we've set for being a guardian. So with that, I'd like to recommend the campus security stipend for your consideration and approval.
Board questions, comments? How many do we have again?
At this point,
Total
13.
13. All right. And then, entertain motion for item number 3.
So move we approve the campus security stipend.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Okay. Our fourth item is consideration and approval of the TASB Local District Update 122 and revised EIC local policy.
And just to touch real quick on the previous item, I do want to thank the board because that stipend was a question you brought to us. And I appreciate the board being very forthright, saying, hey, if they're going to put their lives on the line, we should consider something. So thank you for putting that forward on the table for us. So again, wanting to acknowledge the board's work in that area. Item 4, each session the legislature meets, they accomplish certain things. One of the things they didn't accomplish was appropriately funding schools. That's another fiscal cliff that Ike Bailey didn't speak to. And so we'll see if there's some additional funding coming, but one of the things they did do was a whole lot of wordsmithing. And so as you take a look at the policies, they took the word 10 and put the number 10 in certain places, and they took the number 5 and put the word 5 in other places, and they took the principal and then struck it out and then put the principal right next to the strikeout. So there's very minimal change in this, and I'd say the biggest component is a policy for the use of Narcan on campuses, which, if you'll remember, we brought that to the board in August. That was something that our health service manager, Mr. Wallace, brought forward, saying that, you know, we needed to have Narcan, and we had talked with Dr. Latta, we had people trained, and so we already had regulation for Narcan's use, and so now it's in policy that we should have that regulation, which we do. Some other things in there that jump up off the page are the ability for students to have a way to report things that are concerning, and we meet that through our Stop It app And so, again, as you look through each of these different policies, there are very minimal changes to these policies. But what I would like to highlight is every change made in every one of these policies is driven, by and large, by legislative action and are equally applied to all campuses in the school district. So if there's a policy that is applicable to high school, it's to ASH, PHS, and PCHS. If there is a policy that's applicable to any area, it's to all affected by that area in the district. And so, again, the changes weren't earth-shattering. So with that, I'd like to recommend update 122, policy CQB, CSA, DC, EHB, EHBC, EHBCA, EIC, FEA, FFAC, FFB, FL, and FFI, local.
Yeah, board, any questions, comments? Not hearing none, then entertain a motion, for item number 4. And updated policies and revised.
So move.
Thank you. There's a second?
I'll second.
The motion is second for item number 4 with local district update and revised. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Okay. Item 5 is consideration approval of the addition of student code of conduct regarding the Chromebooks.
Okay, as I mentioned in the superintendent's report, Collegiate has had Chromebooks with students for 3 years. And I know that the board, part of the board's vision was we need to have Chromebooks in the hands of all of our secondary high school students. And Ms. Long worked with Mr. Reagan on this. And so Mr. Reagan and Ms. Long will share some recommendations to the board for addendums or additions to the student code of conduct with regard to students in possession of Chromebooks, because now they all have Chromebooks. Wayne's like, God help us.
They all have Chromebooks. So you should have that, that recommendation for additions in front of you. We just put that with recent technology distribution, there's need for systems to ensure technology is available daily to each student. And so if you have any questions for that, I'm going to step out of the way and Mr. Reagan can answer all your questions. And if I can be helpful, I certainly will.
Have y'all had an opportunity to review that? Okay, our goal was to take the information that Wayne and Rachel gave us in early December and pare that down into something that we could communicate to students. In other words, to increase the font size of what we're doing. And so when kids got back last week, seniors, juniors, and sophomores, we did an orientation with them on page 1.
I think they just have the consequences.
Completely on page 1. And then, I've got it. And with freshmen, it was Monday of this week. We did not discuss the back page, page 2. This is something that my admin team looked at, I think it was December 20th. And we came up with some guidelines. And then over Christmas break, I put together what I think was something that would be easily comprehended by our student body. The biggest notation on there on the back, notice the item in red. So a loss, if it occurs, of one-on-one technology does not mean a loss of technology in the classroom. It would then be controlled by the teacher.
Say that one more time.
When you look at the loss of technology, it does not mean students will not have technology in the classrooms. So when they lose one-on-one technology, it means they lose the privilege of taking technology out of the classroom and off campus. Now, there's an opportunity for parents to come in there and to request that we reinstate that, which we would, but we would give them full explanation. But if the parents chose not to, or if they lost that opportunity again, then it would be for the year. And that's when the item in red would take place, because teachers will still have Chromebook carts, and there will be a minimum number of Chromebooks in each teacher cart. We're looking at having about 10. So if a student had lost one-on-one technology, when they go to class, they're able to use the Chromebook from the teacher cart. They cannot leave the classroom with it. So the way that we're going to do this, it's something that will be registered in Skyward. And when you look at the top, if a student comes to class, one class in a day, and comes without a Chromebook or without a charged Chromebook, it's one Chromebook referral. If it's only one Chromebook referral in a day, it has no effect on the student. If it happens twice in a school day, then that turns into one day technology violation. If you receive 5 of those, the student loses one-on-one technology. Parents are notified by phone. Parents also receive a letter, and then reinstatement can happen. But the student's parent has to, or guardian has to come in and talk to an administrator. We will not deny that to them, but we'll give full explanation to them about what that means. And this is kind of a last chance. So that's our method of managing this.
I have a question. On the Chromebooks, I know y'all gave them to all the students. If they didn't need them, were they required to take it anyways?
That was the district policy.
I can speak to that a little bit. When we spoke to, and Mr. Jennings can jump in here too, we issued all the students a Chromebook because like my daughter has her own laptop. She doesn't use that at school because with the district technology, Wayne's going to correct me if I'm incorrect. We don't allow, kids don't log in on their own device because we risk they do that in college. They have a risk of virus infection and things like that. So with my student, when she's in school at PHS, she uses that Chromebook. Now, when she comes home, if she wants to use the Chromebook, she's got it now. If not, she picks up her computer, logs into Google Classroom on her own device and does that for home. But every kid at the high school, I would say, without exception, uses that Chromebook in some class on a daily basis.
So that's right, they can't, on their personal devices, they can't get on Google Chrome?
No, they
They can
can't.
get on
They
Google
can't.
Chrome. The problem is when we bring them into the network, I have no control whether they have an antivirus solution. So then I run the risk of some of the major issues that have happened in other districts where they've shut the entire district down for weeks. The more of that stuff, the more of that kind of risk we run. So we have systems in place, but the more we push that boundary, the more we run that risk. So it's kind of a cybersecurity safety policy for us.
And we have had, there are other districts that have allowed, as Mr. Jennings said, students to bring in their personal technology. And then the next thing you know, there's, the whole thing's locked down with ransomware, because ransomware got into the system through the student's personal device because they don't have an antivirus on it. So that's why we issued them, they have them, and when they're there on campus, if they need to use technology, that's what they use.
I like being able to control that narrative, that part of it. Mr. Reagan, I do have a question. You made reference into a not charged Chromebook, or dead Chromebook, whatever. So if I show up, first period, I've got a dead Chromebook, I'm going to get my first referral, right?
Correct.
What option do I have to fully charge that Chromebook at school?
Well, I mean, that's the teacher thing. What we've told our kids is this: do not bring your chargers to school.
Okay.
When we did our orientations with them, we told them, you charge your cell phone. When you go home at night, plug in your Chromebook charger right next to it. I mean, because we don't have a way to identify a lost Chromebook charger. by student. So we're telling them not to bring them. Now, there will be instances where I'm sure teachers will not mind. I mean, that they can use the Chromebook cart to charge, say, during a homeroom, anything to gain capacity with it. And if the students feel like, hey, I charge my Chromebook and it's not holding a charge, then they can take it to the library. Librarians will turn in a work order to technology to verify whether there is a problem or is not a problem with the Chromebook. The testing that we had done, and it was very small, indicated that it would hold a charge throughout the day. Mr. Roberts, who uses Chromebooks extensively throughout the day, told me that once he pulls his out first period, he doesn't put them back into the carts until the end of the day. So as a whole, and Wayne has said the same thing, they should hold a charge. That doesn't guarantee that all of them will. We think that would be a small number that does not. So we just don't want students bringing chargers and everybody tripping over them in the cafeteria or the classrooms or the hallways. We don't need chargers in the building. We would have to use Chromebook cards.
So, what happens if the kid comes in and they can't find it at home, or it broke, whatever? Is there a cost on it to replace it? And that may be in there. I thought I had it with me, but I don't.
It's, that's in the policy that we sent out to all parents. We
I
did.
should have already gotten that.
Well,
probably,
we,
but I
we posted it on the website. We posted it through the app.
Okay.
We handed all students a copy as well. And if you need that, I mean, I can
Okay.
send it all
I
to you
just-
tomorrow.
I thought I had read through that. Is it
There
300?
is, there's a breakdown, like I think the whole charge for the whole computer was 300.
I was gonna say
It was like
300
maybe
was ringing.
$60. If the screen gets broke, I mean, there were just various charges for those.
I thought 300 was ringing in my mind that I
Or
had read.
if it's just,
So then what
unusable.
happens if they just absolutely can't come up with that money? I mean,
you know what?
do they have a pay, is there like a, does that have to be?
Yeah, we figure something out with the families on a case-by-case basis, so we'll sit down and work with them
Okay.
on a case-by-case basis.
That'd be a good idea, just to let them give us $300 and take it. It's yours.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of it all, that might be what they're worth. Or they'll be washing Mr. Reagan's truck or something like that in the parking lot to pay it back.
I thought that was right. I just wanted to make sure that that was.
It'll be difficult for some families, and we
Right.
found that out. I mean, the cell phone policy passed by the district's been a huge success.
Good.
Our kids have really embraced that, and it's increased in communication with them and all that. But on rare occasions, we'll have parents come in and, they're not wanting to give up that $15. And I really don't look forward to that day when we're telling them you owe us 300 or 350. And I don't know that I'll be that person, but
Well, no, I mean, for the most part, kids take care of technology these days. They may not know where their coat is or, something like, but they know where their
yes.
phone is.
I think what we're largely going to face, the vast majority of our students will take care of their business. We can identify vandalism. That's a whole nother thing. But there are students on campus, and I'll use this as an example. A young man came to me last week, and he said, "My mom does not want me to have one." And I said, and I know him well. And I said, "So what's the concern?" He goes, "I'm going to lose it." Because we've got kids that right now do not have the organizational skills to remember that. My youngest son was one of those kids. He just wasn't ready for that kind of thing. And so there's going to be kids like that. And this kid is ex-ed, so the deal I made with him is, okay, your bedroom is now my office. You can plug it in my office. You come get it in the morning. And at the end of the day, you come plug it in. And so far, that's working well, but we've just gotten started. But that's probably what we're going to deal with most kids that do not come prepared. It's not out of maliciousness or anything like that. It's just forgetfulness and a little bit of a issue with organizational skills.
And I heard from a teacher today, and kids will be kids. So the big thing for her everybody's brought it, but, oh, I left it in second period. So that they can ask to leave, go say hi to their friend, grab their Chromebook and walk back. And there's always going to be things like that because they're kids and so things to work through.
Okay.
I'm 53 and this is my fourth cell phone app that I've lost, so I can relate to that.
Well, I walk around with a radio. Kevin can attest to this. And I use Amos's silver Sharpie to put my name on it because I lose it at least 2 or 3 times a week. So
Knowing most of your high school teachers, I would imagine that they'll have a place for students who need to just leave it there on a regular basis.
yeah, the thing that our teachers want is they do not want instruction interrupted. And that was the primary concern with that. So I do think, Rachel had explained it to us that this gives kids an opportunity to take their Chromebook home, to work from home, on Google Classroom or whatever the assignment is, UIL activities and things like that. And I was not a big fan of this in the beginning, but I think the vast majority of our kids will handle it well.
Okay.
And we did ask quite a few students, well, how do you do your homework? And they said, right here. So, I mean, I'm sure their eyes are better than mine, but staring at that, trying to fill in a Google Doc on your smartphone is pretty tough. So this helps with that. So with that, I'll make a recommendation on behalf of PHS admin for y'all's consideration and approval for the modification for the code of conduct for student parent Chromebook responsibility and readiness policy for PHS. So that way, it all comes down to, did you know that the district is doing this? Or I'm going to go talk to the board about this. I don't think this is right. So this literally gets everyone on the same page. So we're asking for your consideration and approval of it. So that way we're literally all on the same page.
Our board, our intended motion for item number 5.
I so move.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. 7-0. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your work on that, and
Yes.
For sure.
it'll work. It'll work out. Okay, item number 6 is consider the possible action to order our general election, which will be coming up May the 4th.
Yes, the whole series of items, item 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all have to be moved and separately and voted upon separately, but they all relate to the upcoming board election in May. Mr. Jennings did offer to read each item in Espanol, but we politely declined. We heard him roll his R's and we were like, maybe not. Just kidding. So I'll read each item. And we are working in concert with, I believe, the city. Yeah. Because it's a city, county, school district. It's not a national election. So I'll begin with the first one. Consider and possible action to order a general election. So consider and possible action to order a general election for the election of 3 school board trustees for precinct 1, 6, and 7 to be held on May 4, 2024. So on behalf of the administration, we'd like to ask you to consider and approve that item.
Board, any questions for item number 6? Not hearing none, do I entertain motion for number 6?
I so move.
Thank you. Do a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second for item number 6. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 6. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 7, just going down the list, consider an approval of notice of general election. So I'd like to make that recommendation for the board's consideration and approval.
Any comments, questions about item number 7? Entertain a motion for item number 7.
I so moved.
There a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and second for item number 7. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Item 8 in the series is consider approval of early voting locations and times, and you have all that information within the item. So I'd like to recommend item 8 for your consideration and approval.
Any questions, comments? Entertain a motion for item number 8.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Motion and a second for item number 8. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, item number 9 is consider possible approval to appoint joint elections officer, and you can see that that would be Belinda Hinojosa, city secretary. She would be the joint election officer. So I'd like to recommend on behalf of the administration for your consideration and possible approval, the appointment of the joint elections officer.
Board, any questions, comments? Entertain a motion for item number 9.
So move.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second for item number 9. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, item 10, last one in this series, is consider possible approval to appoint a joint early voting clerk, and that would also be Belinda Hinojosa, city secretary. And so I'd like to recommend 10 for the board's consideration and possible approval.
Comments, questions for item number 10? Do I hear a motion?
Move.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second for item number 10. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. 7-0. Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, item number 11 is also with Wayne, consideration and approval of the food service amendment for 23-24 renewal contract.
Okay, this one is just our consideration. The state of Texas has changed some language on the incentive fee for school districts, and since we have a contract with SFE, we have to amend our contract to delete language that is no longer applicable. And this doesn't change anything in terms of food service delivery. It just ensures that what the state of Texas is requiring of us is in line with what we're requiring of our food service vendor. If we were a district that did our own lunches, this wouldn't need board action, but because we are a district that doesn't do our own lunches, as SFE does, we need to modify their contract, and that contract can only be modified with board action. And so with that, I'd like to recommend for your consideration and approval, change to the food service amendment for S year 23-24.
Board, any questions, comments? I believe the definition is written on there. If you have any questions on that? The wording, I guess. If not, entertain a motion for item number 11.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second for item number 11. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Thank you. 7-0. Motion passed.
Okay, and then we just have our consensus agenda from our December 14th meeting and budget amendments.
Y'all have that information, and it's pretty standard, nothing out of the norm. And so on behalf of the administration, I'd like to recommend the consensus agenda as presented.
Any questions, comments? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion 7, motion carries. Thank you.
If, Mr. President, if you and the board will so indulge a very brief closed session on employment matters, very brief. And I'll ask Ms. Merrick if she can stay, and all others can be dismissed.
Okay.
Before we do dismiss, I want to thank everybody that put all this together,
Yes,
obviously.
absolutely.
All the
Thank
adults, thank y'all very much. Everything that we've done and do is a part of this right here. You won't be able to see it, but it's a vase with drawn flowers, signed by Layla. This will be on my refrigerator for the next year. That's the reason we sit up here, or I do. This is it right here. That's awesome. So this is a really cool deal. So made my night.
Thank you very
you all.
much. According to Texas Government Code 551.001, we'll go into closed sessions this time. It is 8:18.
And thank you, Ms. Alcazar, for your sophistication in your Google sheet.